ساعة العمل، دقت ساعة الزحف، دقت ساعة الانتصار. لا رجوع، إلى الأمام، إلى الأمام، إلى الأمام. ثورة، ثورة.
Power is transient. From time immemorial, some world leaders have failed to understand the impermanence of power, and that explains the power intoxication and the unchallenged atrocities they committed under the protection of power. Soon, those powers on which they so much hanged on were gone, and they became ashamed and vulnerable. Welcome to Sam Towers, and today we are counting down our picks on the top 10 powerful leaders who came to a shameful end. Number 10. Robert Mugabe. Robert Mugabe was the leader of Zimbabwe from 1980 to 2017. Mugabe has a complicated legacy. Some view him as a revolutionary and war hero, while others view him as a dictator who ruined the country. The fact, however, remains that Mugabe's desire to retain power saw him rule Zimbabwe for 37 years. His long administration was stained by hyperinflation, poverty, crumbling infrastructure, high-level corruption, and even cases of crimes against humanity. On 21st November 2017, Mugabe was unceremoniously kicked out of office in a military coup. He died in 2019. Number 9. Mobutu Sese Seko. Mobutu Sese Seko was the leader of Zaire, now Democratic Republic of Congo, from 1965 to 1997. Mobutu was a brutal dictator who plundered his nation's wealth and publicly executed his political rivals and anyone who dared challenge him. Mobutu amassed a personal fortune estimated to be over $5 billion by selling his nation's resources while his people lived in poverty. In 1997, his government was overthrown by armed rebellion led by Laurent Kabila. Mobutu fled into exile and died in September 1997 of prostate cancer. Number 8. Hosni Mubarak. Hosni Mubarak was the leader of Egypt from 1981 to 2011. Mubarak's presidency was marred with corruption. Mubarak's personal wealth was estimated to be worth up to $70 billion, which was largely garnered from corruption and bribes. In January 2011, protests against Mubarak and his government erupted all around Egypt, calling for his resignation. The protests soon got violent, and Mubarak was forced to resign on February 11, 2011. Hosni Mubarak was compelled to stand trial for the atrocities he committed while in office. He was found guilty of the killing of peaceful protesters and sentenced to life in prison. He remained in detention until his acquittal on March 2, 2017. He died on 25th February 2020. Number 7. Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was the president of Liberia from 1997 till 2003. Prior to him becoming president, he was a convicted criminal and a rebel leader. His militia, the National Patriotic Front of Liberia (NPFL), overthrew the government of Samedoe in 1989. As president, he meddled in the Sierra Leonean Civil War. His involvement in the war led to war crimes such as rape of women, extreme torture, mutilation, and the use of child soldiers. Taylor was forced to resign after domestic opposition to his government grew and international pressure. Shortly after leaving office in 2003, he was indicted for war crimes and crimes against humanity. In 2012, after years of trial, Charles Taylor was found guilty of war crimes and sentenced to 50 years in prison. Number 6. Nicolae Ceausescu. Nicolae Ceausescu was a Romanian dictator. He ruled Romania from 1965 till 1989. His government was the most repressive government in Eastern Europe during the Cold War. He plunged the country into economic doom and a ridiculous low standard of living for citizens. He was also responsible for the severe human rights abuses in the country. His government collapsed in December 1989 after a series of violent demonstrations against his government. Having lost power, he tried to flee but was captured by rebel forces. He was tried and found guilty of illegal gathering of wealth and genocide. On Christmas Day 1989, Nicolae Ceausescu was executed by a firing squad on live television alongside his wife. Number 5. Samuel Doe. Samuel Doe was the leader of Liberia from 1980 to 1990. He came into power after staging a violent coup which led to the death of his predecessor, President William Tolbert. Samuel Doe's government was highly repressive. Violent rebellion against his government began in 1985 but peaked in 1989. He was captured on September 9, 1990 by Prince Yomi Johnson's rebel force. Samuel Doe was stripped naked on the streets and subjected to extreme torture. After 12 hours of torture at the hands of Yomi Johnson, he was killed and his corpse exhibited in the streets of Monrovia. Number 4. Benito Mussolini. Benito Mussolini was an Italian dictator who ruled Italy from 1922 to 1943. He was the founder of fascism and a principal ally of Nazi Germany and Japan in World War II. In 1943, after Italy suffered major disasters from the Allied powers, the Italian Grand Council of Fascism passed a vote of no confidence in him, and he was dismissed as head of government and placed in captivity. He was soon rescued by German troops and put in charge of a puppet regime in northern Italy. In late April 1945, Benito Mussolini was captured by Italian communists and executed by firing squad. His body was hung upside down in Milan for public view. Number 3. Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was the president of Iraq from 1979 to 2003. Saddam Hussein's presidency was very brutal, especially to opposition movement. He ordered purges and genocides, which led to the death of thousands of Iraqis. His invasion of Iran and Kuwait resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths. In 2003, after suspicion of Saddam Hussein's possession of weapons of mass destruction and ties with Al-Qaeda, Iraq was invaded by a coalition led by the US to remove Saddam from power. Saddam was deposed, captured, and made to face trial for crimes against humanity. He was found guilty and executed by hanging on 30th December 2006. Number 2. Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was the leader of Germany from 1933 to 1945. He initiated the most devastating war in human history, World War II, and was central to the perpetration of the Holocaust, which was the extermination of about 6 million Jews. Hitler's actions and ideology are universally regarded as evil. On April 30, 1945, with much of Germany in ruins and Germany practically defeated by the Allied forces, Hitler committed suicide to avoid capture by the advancing Red Army. His body was burned by the Red Army beyond recognition. Number 1. Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi was the leader of Libya from 1969 to 2011. Gaddafi transformed Libya to a socialist state. His leadership catered for the basic needs of the people. He was, however, anti-Western and brutal to his political opponents. Human rights groups worldwide criticized his leadership for the many cases of human rights abuses in Libya. He was also alleged to have been a sponsor of terrorist groups. After 31 years in power, during the Arab Spring, major protests against Gaddafi's government broke out on 17 February 2011. Gaddafi ordered the killings of hundreds of protesters in Benghazi. The clash between Gaddafi forces and rebels escalated quickly, and it became a civil war. NATO joined forces with the rebels, and together they launched attacks on Gaddafi's forces. Gaddafi, realizing his imminent defeat, fled the country's capital. He was eventually captured by the rebels on the 20th October 2011 after an intense gun battle between his guards and rebel forces. He was stripped, tortured, and eventually killed as he pleaded for his life. Do you agree with our list? Which powerful leader do you think has the most shameful hand? For more informative lists published weekly, subscribe to Sam Towers.